Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Javi, and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Dean Karnazes' new book, Awareness High, My Life in Motion, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue, Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores until after 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor now run by the third generation owner, Nancy Bass Whiting. We want to thank you, all of you, for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers and authors such as Dean and Jesse, we wouldn't be here today. Tonight, we are thrilled to have with us Dean Karnazes for the launch of his newest book, A Runner's High. Dean is a two-time New York Times best-selling author and an icon in the running world. He is widely recognized as one of the fittest people on the planet. Time magazine named Dean one of the top 100 most influential people in the world. An internationally recognized endurance athlete and New York Times bestselling author, Dean has pushed his body and mind to inconceivable limits. Joining Dean in conversation tonight is Jesse Itzler. Jesse only eats fruits until noon, loves Run DMZ, and enjoys living life out of the box. Actually, he doesn't even have a box. He co-founded Marquise Jet, the world's largest prepaid jet card company in 2001, which he and his partners sold to Berkshire Hathaway NetJets. He then partnered with Zico Coconut Water, which they sold to the Coca-Cola Company in 2013. He is a former rapper on MTV, and he produced and sang both the NBA's Emmy Award-winning I Love This Game music campaign and the popular New York Knicks anthem, Go New York Go. Esler is also the author of Living with a Seal, New York Times bestseller #1 on the LA Times, #1 on Amazon, and #1 on iTunes audiobook, and the author of Living with the Monks. When he's not out training for his next 100-mile run and being a dad, Jesse can be found at the NBA's Atlanta Hawks games, where he is owner of the team. He is married to Spanx founder Sarah Blakely, and the couple and their 4 children live in Atlanta, Georgia. So without further ado, please welcome Dean Karnazes and Jesse Itzler to the stage.
I feel like I shouldn't have even been part of that intro. You know, this is it's your night. It's the launch of an amazing book, and you know, for me, this is a great honor, Dean. You really were behind the reason behind me starting to run long distances, as well as probably the entire movement in this country and maybe even worldwide. So I want to first thank you for bringing the sport of ultra running to the forefront and congratulate you on this book. And before we start tonight, I just want to say, Dean, I read the entire book cover to cover in one sitting. I haven't done that since high school. And this is more than a running book. This is a book about family. It's a book about a blueprint on almost how to live and mindset. I laughed. It literally made me cry. It's hysterical. And it's incredibly inspiring, which is everything you want in a book. And I'm not saying that because we're here tonight. I'm telling you as a friend, this was an incredible book. I've read your other book. So congratulations on that. It's a job very well done.
Thank you, Jesse. And that was a paid endorsement, by the way, people.
It's true. So I thought what we would do tonight, Dean, is we'll have a conversation about the book, but also about your journey and where you are now in your life. You know, as you get into your mid-50s, it's a lot different than when you started out in this sport almost 30 years ago, for about 30 minutes, and then allow the audience, anyone listening, to ask questions. There's a little ask question box in the bottom of your screen, or there should be, where you can type in questions, and we will field questions to either Dean or to myself if you have any questions, and we'll spend about 20 minutes doing that, and everybody will be out in about at 5 minutes to the hour, being respectful of everybody's time. So Dean, I read the book, and I was wondering what it would be about, because the first book introduced people to the sport of ultra running and the mindset and your journey. What was the genesis of this book, and what did you want to get out of it, and why did you feel compelled to write it?
Yeah, well, I think my first book, Ultra Marathon Man, was kind of a coming of age book. It was about me discovering the sport of ultra marathoning and kind of telling my story, which exposed more people to the sport and lifestyle and activity of ultra marathoning. This book is more of a, how do you stay the course? How do you stay true to the person you are? How do you stay in the game? we're going on 3 decades here. You know it as well. It's how do you show up? How do you stay in shape? How do you respond when you're no longer on the podium? Let's face it, I'm not a kid anymore, and the kids that are coming into this sport are badasses. I mean, they're so fast. How do you stay relevant? How do you still enjoy it? So, and as well, every runner has a family, and there's no way you can be there's no such thing as the loneliness of a long distance runner. You impact other people by your actions, and how do you balance family and these insane events that we do, and God knows where.
You mentioned something about the runners in the sport, the modern day runners being badasses. And there's been a noticeable leap in the times and the course records being set as a new wave of runners come in. What do you think that's from? Are humans being genetically better? Are people training better? It's not like it's better equipment in running. What is it that people like the elite now are doing differently than people 20 years ago?
I think it's a combination of all the things you just said, but I also think it's more like collegiate athletes getting into ultramarathoning. Ultramarathoning has become more mainstream. I mean, the first ultramarathon I did in 1993, I wore board shorts. I wore a pair of surf shorts. I didn't even own running gear, and I was just kind of I didn't know how to train. I just thought this sounds like an insane endeavor. I want to try it. But now these, the kids are coming in. They're decorated athletes. They've been well coached. They're ferocious and they're young. And I was living at sea level. Half the time chasing wind and for windsurfing or surf for surfing, and kind of running when I could fit in the time for it. Now guys, they live at altitude, they train at altitude, and running is their entire life.
It's true. And, I think early on in the sport, I remember someone telling me, maybe it was Pam Reed or someone, that there's an element of patience to ultra running because, it's not a sprint. There's it's a long journey with many ups and downs that you go through psychologically. And I remember someone telling me, I don't remember who, that there's an advantage to someone who's a little bit older because of the patience element. Younger runners just want to get out there and attack right from the start. Do you find, and now I found that like I'm watching some of these Badwater times and people are able to keep this pace that's like unbelievable. Do you think that there's an element of patience that's kind of gone away now because people realize like, wow, we're capable of so more, like we can keep a pace that maybe we didn't think we could. Like when someone broke the 4-minute mile, right? Like, oh my God, it's possible. Like a 7-minute pace is possible. What are your thoughts around patience and the sport?
Yeah, no, I think to your point, the edge has been moved further out. I think initially these younger guys who were coming in and women, I mean, the women are just equally as impressive. They were dominating the 50K race, and people said, well, they're not going to be able to scale to these longer races. Well, then they started winning 50-mile races, and they were just balls to the wall the entire time. And people say, well, no, there's no way they'll be able to pull that off for 100 miles. And they're doing 100 miles now.
Right.
So I think it's been this progression of believing that something is possible and then doing it. You've seen it, I've seen it. With Badwater, the one thing that you have to bear in mind is it's almost a different race now because of the night start. So it's hard to compare apples to apples with a daytime start when you're running through Death Valley, in the heat of the day versus at midnight. And you've been there, so you know what it feels like.
Yeah. What I love about the book is you really give people a perspective of the mindset of going through the journey of not just preparation, but actually putting your application in, the lottery system, the unknown if you're going to get into a big race like the Western States. I don't want to give too much of the book away. But I love that you give a really descriptive, and I think right on the money, and I could say that because I've experienced some of these races, not on the level you have, but you give people a really good insight into the mindset. And I think anyone listening here probably is most interested in mindset. And what I loved what you said is You got to the start of the Western states, and you said, I only have two goals: to get to the starting line and to get to the finish line. And I was like, wow, like you really simplified this. And I know it sounds so obvious. Tell me a little bit about what goes through your mind when you're going to the starting line. I mean, back in the day, you were trying to win it, and maybe you still are today. You can share with the audience your thoughts about winning and not winning. But how do you make such a complicated thing, nutrition, pace, walking, running, dealing with pain? How do you take all these elements and simplify it?
You get into the moment. You know what that's like. You get into the zone, the here and now, and you put the blinders on to the future. You don't reflect on the past. You don't think about anything except taking your next step to the best of your ability. And that's what I say to myself. It comes down to being present and just doing your very best in that instant of time. And it takes a lot of discipline, right, Jesse? I mean, you might be out there running for 24 hours straight, and to maintain that focus is really something that you have to work at. But to me, that's really the beauty of our sport, is if you can eliminate all the outside clutter and all the noise and just distill it down to the very simple act of taking one step to the best of your ability over and over again. That's the best approach I found.
For me, you're a runner, Dean. You've made your career and your life running. I looked at the list of people you've worked with, the sponsors. It's like a business directory of athletic and wellness companies worldwide. So, I mean, you've worked with everybody. But I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And at my company, Marquis Jet, which is a private jet company, I used to ask my sales reps, how'd the meeting go? And they would come back inevitably every time like, oh, it was hard. They beat me up on price. They beat me up on competition. And I would say, well, you're a sales rep. Your job is to sell. The customer's job is to push back. What'd you expect? And I'd be like, how did you not know those obstacles are coming? And part of being an entrepreneur is anticipating the obstacles and problem solving. And my skills got sharpened through ultra running, because a big part of it is problem solving. When you go into a race, do you think about prior everything that could go wrong? Do you think, I'm trying to get into your mind without getting into the book. We'll get into the book in a second. Do you think about what could go wrong and problem shoot and evolve? Do you go through the course in your head? Do you visualize? Have you already run the race 10,000 times and now you're just going through the motions? Is it already an inevitable done deal that you're going to finish and maybe win? What is Karno's philosophy around predicting problems and race preparation mentally in that regard?
Well, thankfully, you and I both have the experience to know that shit's going to happen. There's no such thing as a perfect race, not at least in my history. And so you anticipate what's going to happen. You may have experienced it before. That's where experience comes in handy. But again, to me, the most poignant thing to do is stand at that starting line and just say, today I'm going to be the best that I can be. I'm going to leave nothing on the course. I'm going to give it my all. And that's all we can do, right? I mean, we can't go beyond anything more than what we are. So I just say my commitment to myself today is it's 100% effort. That's it. Either I'm finishing or it's a stretcher, in an ambulance or taking me out of here on. And you can't fail that way, right, Jess? I mean, even if you DNF, if you're on a gurney, you gave it your all. You didn't quit without a fight.
Yeah. I've been talking about this a lot lately, and every year I pick a word, Dean, that kind of is my guiding word of the year. And that could be newness, it could be family, it could be change, it could be spontaneity, and the last 3 years, my word, I don't tattoo it on my arm or anything, but it's like, this is what I want to go after this year, and it could be health. I want to be healthier. For the last 3 years, my word has been soul. And I feel like, to what you're saying, if you're going to show up at a race and invest the time to drive out there and have people in your life commit to cheer you on and have a crew and all this thing, put your soul into it. or don't even go. If you're going to be here and listen to us talk, maybe there'll be one nugget that resonates that really changes your life. Put your soul into it. Don't be on the phone. Be where your feet are. Be present, and I agree with you 100%. If you're going to show up, whether it's an ultra marathon, a sales meeting, your son's soccer game, put your soul into it, man. And I feel like soul is tangible, Dean. I can tell you there's a lot of soul that went into this book. Customers feel soul. They feel it. Like, I didn't shortcut this, man. This is my journey, good and bad. You talk about your relationship with your wife, with your son. You talk about, your sister. You go deep into this, and you tie it all in. And I thought you were really vulnerable in the book, and I thought when there's one scene where you talk about something, and I don't want to give it away, with your son, and he's driving and he had a little something to drink, and the father-son relationship in that moment made me cry as a parent of 4, And one thing I think running has done for me, and I'm curious I'm sure I already know the answer. It's made me like a better human. It's connected me to nature. It's made me a better human. And more importantly, it's made me proud of me. They asked Richard Branson what the number one thing of his success was, and he said going to the gym. I don't think he meant the discipline. I think he raising dumbbells. I think he meant prioritizing himself. What's the number one takeaway for you, Dean, in your unbelievable 30 plus years of this sport? What are the things that have?
If I could distill it right down, it would just be that that running is worthwhile in itself. Just the act of running teaches you so much, and it gives you soul because it humblizes you, right? You can never master it. You could always go faster. You could always go further. It gives you an appreciation of the air we breathe. So the environment matters. It teaches you camaraderie, and it teaches you that runners are united because we share a commonality of running. There's so many things, especially nowadays, that divide us, right? I mean, the color of your skin, the God you worship, the language you speak. But running is something that unites people and brings people together. And to me, we need more things that unite people. I think runners are kindred spirits, and it's not just in the U.S. I mean, I travel overseas all the time, and I go to events, fun runs, 5K fun runs, where I'm like the ambassador. And even though I don't speak the same language, I can feel that soulful connection with another human through the act of running.
Dean, for people that are listening out there that are maybe want to experience their first time ultra marathon, or maybe a first time, let's say 100 miler, which when people say ultra, just so we're talking the same language, technically an ultra is anything over 26.2, correct?
Yeah, I mean, ultra in Latin means beyond. So an ultra marathon is anything beyond the marathon. And you're right, 26.2 is the marathon. Anything beyond that is an ultra marathon.
And is it safe to say that kind of the most sought after benchmark is the 100 miler? Would you say that that's kind of like become the new marathon for the ultra world? Is that safe to say? I don't know.
I would say the hundo is kind of the crown jewel. I mean, for some of us, like now, like the 200 milers become the new 100 miler, but that's a very, very small subset of people. I would say 100 mile is the prize for a lot of ultra marathoners.
If you were coaching a 22-year-old marathoner that said, Dean, I want to run a 100 miler, where would you start? Would you start with the mindset? Would you lay out a training program? Do you feel like they'd have to? I heard that usually you can run 2x your longest run race day. How would you prepare them, and what would the mileage look like? And I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm curious. Selfishly, for me, I'm still learning.
Well, first of all, Jesse, I would ask them why they want to do it, to make sure it's something authentic and true to who they were. But I think that everyone's different. I think we're all an N of one. So I always say to people, listen to everyone, follow no one. Some people can handle high base mileage, high weekly base mileage. And I'm talking about 100 to 150 miles a week. Other people break down with that sort of volume. So it'd be shorter, faster workouts with a lot of cross training. I'm a big advocate for cross training on a bike, or you got one of those ellipticos. I love the cross training on the elliptico because you can get the volume, but without the impact. And I think that is because you can get the impact on the day of race. You can get yourself through it, but it's all that training with impact that breaks you down. I think you would agree, right?
I agree. Did you do a lot of cross training for your big races? Did you feel like you had to run every day? And did that mindset shift to, you know what, I'm okay if I swim today or bike today?
Yeah, it shifted a little bit, and I started running less volume because I was a high mileage guy. I mean, some weeks I'd run 200 miles, and it started breaking me down. Jesse, I got to be honest. I started showing up at the start of a race, already worn out. So I shifted quite a bit, and what I found is that if you go for 2 days without running, that next run is really quality mileage because you just feel so good. Like you don't feel like you're tired already when you start out. So I shifted a lot to cross training with the elliptico, with body weight exercises. You and I both know Joe DeSena, and I've become an advocate for burpees. I mean, I start every morning with 25 burpees. To heck with making bed. Like I get out of bed and it's 25 burpees, and then I make my bed.
What's your current what would be like a current 2 or 3 days look like for you now? Not even leading up to a race, but just, I know every day you're active. You're Superman. When you implode if you weren't. What does a typical day look like? Take us through a day from when you wake up to when you go to sleep, in chunks.
Yeah. So yesterday, the night before last, I was not sleeping well. I was kind of nervous. My book's getting ready to launch. I was tossing and turning, and I just finally said, "Screw it." And I got up. It was 3:45, and I slept on a headlamp, and I went and ran a marathon. I was back for breakfast, had breakfast with my son, and then just went about my day. I also do a lot of body weight exercise and HIIT training. So these little sessions of HIIT training with push-ups, pull-ups, dips, chair dips, and burpees. And the routine I follow is about 12 to 14 minutes. It's high intensity. I mean, your heart rate is just pegged. And I do like 3 or 4 of those throughout the course of the day. And the other thing I never do is something that you're doing right now. I'm standing, Jess. I never sit down. I think I haven't been sitting for maybe 15 years now, and I really believe that's very, very good for your body overall.
Do you own a car yet?
So I was sponsored by Volkswagen, and I gave the car back because I mean, in 1 year I put 2,000 miles on the car. I never drive, and that was 10 years ago, and no, I haven't owned a car since.
That's hilarious. You've had all these. You're what a life resume. The 50 and 50, all the races you've done. You're a Badwater winner. Nobody can take that away from you. You really put the sport on the map, in my opinion. I think you're, the founding father, in my opinion, of the sport. Maybe not of the races, but of giving it the fame that it deserved and inspiring a whole generation. You've met the president. You've run in foreign countries. I love this story in the book. I'm not going to share it here, but it's hilarious. You were Time 100 person, most influential person, and you've had egg on your face too. You're a target. When you go to races early on, people are gunning for you. They want to be able to say, "I beat Dean." Two questions. One is, and these are questions I'm curious about. What was the highlight of the career? What was the one thing that really, of all these amazing accomplishments, stand out? And number two, we're both in our 50s. We're looking at 80 in the mirror. It's not too far down the road. No, we are. It's less than 30 years out, and life changes. There's not a lot of 70-year-olds running Badwater. There's some, and I'm sure you'll be one, but there's not a lot. It changes. Is it bothering you at all to age? So question one is.
Yeah, no, so the first question is, without a doubt, my favorite and most memorable race is a 10K. And you're probably thinking, why? Like, you've run all around the world. You've done, these multi-day races across the Atacama, Gobi Desert. but I ran a 10K with my daughter Alexandria on her 10th birthday. And to me, that was just a special moment I'll never forget, because she came to me and said, Dad, I want to run a 10K with you on my birthday. And you've got kids, you know what that's like. You see a different side of your kid, especially when they're hurting and struggling. And I saw a side of her that was tougher than I'd ever believed that she possessed. So that was my favorite race. And I'll be honest, Jesse. I mean, yeah, it hurts to get passed by people, but just as often I'm passing other people. I do have a kind of a target on my back, because I am this guy that kind of achieved some notoriety and people want to beat me, and so be it. I've learned to live with that. Again, if I do the best that I can do on a given day, that's all I can do. So whether I end up ahead of someone or someone ahead of me, my commitment is still the same, that I'm going to be the best Dean that Dean can be on that day. And that's, let the cards fall where they will.
Do you, someone had asked a question, sorry, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves in the question, but I'm sure you get asked a lot, like that mileage, how do you stay injury free? What do you think has allowed you to continue to have this amazing, 200-mile weeks is no joke, man. How did you be able to stay relatively injury free? And what is your advice to people that are starting to get little nooks and pains of measuring like a serious illness? And I know you're not a doctor, you can't diagnose anybody, on a Zoom call, but what do you look for injury versus with regular wear and tear?
Yeah, thankfully I've got good biomechanics. I've always had a really, I've always run like a runner should. I've always been a midfoot striker. I've always had a slight forward lean. I've always taken choppier, more, quicker footsteps, so higher foot turnover, shorter, accentuated arm swings. But again, I don't pronate or supinate. My foot kind of hits as it should. And, your biomechanics are hereditary. The best thing you can do as a long distance runner is to choose your parents well. So I advise you to choose your parents well. But then beyond that, I am such an advocate in conditioning your overall body. I think just running is a recipe for overuse injury. I don't care who you are. If you just run, I think you're going to suffer overuse injuries. So I really advocate a lot of cross training.
Do you, I know in the races you've talked about, you made eating pizza famous in your first book. And even here, in this book, you talk about some of the candy that you've had and things that have been given to you, which is interesting. I know when I run a race, I think about, okay, I need 500 milligrams of sodium every hour. I need 30 ounces on average of fluids, I need 200 calories. And I'm very mindful of that. And I'm also very mindful of not overeating. Do you keep a calculator in your head during the race, or are you just on feel? Science has progressed so much. You can get your glucose levels on a patch. What are you doing nutritionally during these long races to make sure you're getting enough fuel, but not overfueling?
Yeah, I am still an advocate for listening to your body. So, I've tried doing a prescribed number, like 200 to 300 calories an hour, so many salt caps every hour, and it just doesn't work for me. I think that I turn inward and try to listen to my body. Like, do I want solid food? Do I want more gel? Do I need electrolytes? Do I crave something salty? Do I crave something savory? Do I crave something sweet? And I think your body, if you listen to your body, really listen to it, it will tell you what it wants.
Dean, how do you get good at being able to take down food and then run? For many people, nutrition is such a big part, but you're talking about eating in a 24-hour race, 5,000, 6,000 calories. Did you have to practice to get good at eating and running? And do you practice it?
Well, ordering a pizza on the run, which you talked about briefly, which I described in my first book, that was like baptism by fire. But I was running a 200-mile 12-person relay race just by myself, solo, because I don't have 11 friends left. And in the middle of the night, I had no food and no crew around, but I had a cell phone and a credit card. So I ordered a pizza, and I just rolled it up into like a big Italian burrito and just, mowed it as I ran. And I couldn't stop eating it, Jesse. I was so deprived at that point. And, here's a large pizza. I just thought I'm going to wolf down this entire thing. And I ate it all. And I thought, oh, that's probably a really bad idea. Like, what's going to happen, an hour down the road? But nothing happened. I just ran through it. So maybe I have an ironclad stomach. I don't know. I don't have many GI issues. And I'm pretty lucky, I guess, in that regard.
I've always found for me, Dean, I have to start with a banana. And then the next day it's a banana and an avocado. I have to train my body to be able to do, not on a bike, but when I'm running, that really, I guess everybody's different in that regard.
Run fasted? I mean, I know you typically fast, relatively fast till, what do you do? Time restricted, like 14 or 16 hours?
Yeah. I think, I've had some, a lot of people have dropped out of, my friends have dropped out of races because they're not used to taking in so many calories or even liquid, and so I was curious. Shifting gears for 1 second, do you have a mantra when you run? Is there anything that like you repeat, like I will not quit or this will pass, or is there anything that you rely on or think about? Where's your brain? Is it locked in on the run? Is it trying to stay calm? Is it being super present? When you're at mile 48 of a 100+ mile run, where's your head?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I think thinking is problematic because it's too daunting. So I just say, don't think, do. And to me, doing is just putting one foot in front of the other. Sometimes I chant a little mantra. I've heard that chanting a mantra in the third person is beneficial. So I just say, you can do this, Greek. I'm Greek. You can do this, Greek. You can do this, Greek. Just kind of reminding me about my heritage and telling myself that, you come from strong stock and, do it justice. You've come from a place too, a hard place. I mean, you're Russian and you know what your family went through and what their family went through. So we come from tough stock, and just remind yourself of that.
No doubt about it. Do you, this is a personal question, but on a scale of 1 to 10, Dean, mental toughness wise, I don't mean to put you on the spot. 10 being like the toughest human, mentally, and 1 being someone that's just cracks easily. Where would you say you were 30 years ago, and where would you say you are now? Have you gone up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I was about 30 years ago, about a 3, maybe a 4. And now I would say I'm right up there with you. I'm pretty close to a 10. I mean, I have dental surgery without Novocaine. Like, I don't feel pain anymore. And I don't know if that's because we saturated our neurons, but I like, my kids are amazed that I don't feel pain. And I do ice baths, don't flinch, nothing. And I, like you, I've got low body fat, so it's, getting in an ice bath is tougher for us.
What's interesting about that is, so you're saying your grit was maybe a 3 or 4 back when you started, but by doing these challenges and learning, you've actually conditioned yourself. You've taken your baseline from a 3 or a 4 to a 9 or a 10. And what you're really saying is that anybody can do that. You're a 3. There's a lot of 3s listening here. Maybe there's 5s, maybe there's 7s. But what you're saying is, by going through the journey and putting yourself in a position where you have to self-assess and get pushed, and you're out of your high thread count bed, and you're being challenged in the woods, and you saw a bear in the book, there's a bear and all this stuff going on. You can take your baseline. And I believe, Karno, once it goes up, it never goes back down. Like, I don't think you're ever going to drop down to a 3. And I think that grit translates to business, parenting, patience with your kids. Doesn't mean you're the best parent or I'm the best parent. I'm not. But it means that you have a different level of patience, tolerance, acceptance. And I think it's all from running. Would you agree?
You said it so poignantly. I mean, running teaches you all of these lessons. I mean, the lessons from running translate to, to parenting, to business, to life in general, to interpersonal relationships, everything. I I so advocate for that. And that's one of the reasons I've been such a vocal advocate for running and marathoning and ultramarathoning. I think that there's no downside. It benefits everyone. Everyone wins. And there's few things that have no downsides, but I think running is one of those things.
Dean, do you think it's necessary? I've heard people training for 100 milers that have done 3 runs of 5 miles a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 at night, or 4 miles a day, and then a long run on the weekend. And then I've heard people that like, I'm just not going to quit. And then I've heard the third segment of people that put in the 200-mile weeks. Is that a personal decision, or do you think one of those systems is better than the other?
You know, I like doubling up. I've never tripled up, but I do like doubling up because I think you can do fewer miles and get just as a better bang for the buck. I mean, you're revving up your system twice in a day, so your body's going to respond to that as long as it's shorter duration runs. But I think it's listen to everyone, follow no one. I think everyone is unique and different. And I mean, Jesse, you and I, we've shown up for 100 milers, and you see the crowd. You look at some of these people, and they don't look all that fit. You're running. How is that guy or how is that gal going to get to the finish line? There's something that transcends your physiology, right? It's something up here, and we both witness that. So you can develop your toughness through running like no other sport, I think.
That's what I love about ultra running. I love running. I started out running 2 miles. That was my goal, and nothing changed on my body. I'm not any stronger. I'm not strong at all. But I took it to 100 miles because I saw people at the starting line of a race finish a 100-mile race that didn't look like Olympians. And I was like, whoa, all they have is they're not quitting. Like, this is a sport of will. It has nothing to do. And I'm not talking about if you want to win the race. I'm talking about finishing. It has nothing to do with I was a great high school athlete. I played 1 varsity sport. Like, I was nothing. But all I have to do is not quit, and I'm going to get a medal. I want to try that. I like my odds in that. That's the great neutralizer. So that's what I really love about the sport. I think that it's a great neutralizer.
Yeah, I think there's a quote in the book that says something like, finishing an ultramarathon is simple. All you have to do is not stop. That's pretty much it, right?
Look, there's so many good quotes in here. You could have a t-shirt company. Go to the North Face or someone and start taking, all this stuff. Like, you have these quotes are unbelievable. Your feet can take you to some interesting places. When you talk about the White House, how you ran into the White House. Endurance comes from enduring. That's a great quote. I don't know if these are where these come from or stem from, but they'd be great on a t-shirt. Anybody that picks up this book is going to be so inspired. I ran today, and I literally, and this is the power of getting into the mindset of an ultra runner, especially someone as experienced as Dean, because guess what? There's not a lot of people on the planet as experienced as Dean, certainly not American runners. There's a new wave of American runners, and they're amazing, but they don't have the experience that Dean has. And I mean that. So when you read this, you're going to get a real detailed inside look of the mind, the journey, the love of the sport, of how you can have a full life. Dean says, like, if it all went away from me today, when he's lying on the ground, I had an amazing run. Dean doesn't have a yacht. Dean's not flying around on a $50 million airplane to his private home in, blah, blah, blah land. The man runs and bikes and is happy and is healthy and looks young and doesn't miss a day of work and has meaningful relationships and is a pioneer. And there's a lot to learn from this book. There's a lot to learn from this man. And anybody interested, today is the launch date. Just a reminder, you can click the purchase a runner's high on the bottom of the screen and support Dean, support the running community, support independent bookstores, all with the click of a button. And this is a quick, easy read, and it's my kind of read. You want to know why? It's not scientific. It's human. It's human. And that's what I loved about this book, because any human can relate to a goal. and Dean has built his life around goals. I want to open this up to audience Q&A, and let's do everything.
Before you do that, Jesse, audience members, did I pick the perfect conversationalist with Jesse Itzler? The guy is amazing. It doesn't get any better. I'm so blessed to have you in this conversation with me, Jesse. So thank you.
Dean, I owe a lot to you, man. I don't like. I'm not to get emotional or anything. I was running my first race. Dean and I had met through a mutual friend. We had met in New York. We ended up becoming somewhat of business partners to a company I had called Zico Coconut Water. But I was running my first 100-miler. Dean had given me some advice. I show up at the race, and the format of the race is it's a big 1-mile loop or 2-mile loop or something. So you could always see people in the race. You're constantly. It was the USA National Ultramarathon Championship in 2006. So 15 years ago, Dean. That's how far we go back. And I'm running, and all of a sudden, I'm like maybe 18, 20 miles in. I hear from all the way across the track, Itzler, lose the cotton shirt. I was, and I had no idea. And it was Dean. Forgetting about his race, telling me that my cotton's going to absorb too much sweat or whatever. I don't even know what. I don't even know why. I immediately took the shirt off. I had these 2 nipple guards on my nipples, so I didn't get any taping. And I went the rest of the race without a shirt because I didn't have anything else. What else should I do? He was like, run, don't quit.
Oh, I remember that race, Jesse. You were a hero. I mean, I remember you had like ice packs duct taped around your shins, just trying to get 100 miles. It was amazing. That was great to watch.
Well, you know, again, I have to. There's always people. You don't even know the people you inspire. How many people read your first book and maybe ran a 5K or a marathon? How many children got into health and wellness? Like, that's an amazing legacy, man. You know, I hope this book sells 1 million copies, but even if it doesn't and it sells 5 and it inspires 5 people, it inspired me. I told you I'm going to buy 100 books and give them out as gifts, minimum. Then you already won. You already won.
I mean, I like to say if I write 3 words that inspire people my entire life, it's been worth living. So thank you, Jesse.
Well, let's open it up. You know, we got about 10, 15 minutes, and I know it's a crazy night, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Thank you for joining us. I know there'll be maybe a replay for those that missed this. We should make this a podcast. I'm happy to put this out and promote it, everything that you're doing for fitness and wellness, and that's why I'm here, and also for an honor. Are there any questions here? Let's see. Let me go through these questions. I can click them on here and see. Dean, do you listen to, when you run, someone is asking, Nizar, if you listen to audiobooks or music, and what helps you maintain your focus, which is a really good question.
I do all of the above. Sometimes I don't feel like running with anything, so I just completely unplug and I don't even wear a watch, Jesse. I don't even know where I'm going to go. I don't know how long I'm going to go for. I just walk out the door with running's the ultimate freedom. So I might pick a trail and run down that trail for a while. If I feel like running hard, I'll run hard. If I feel like walking, I'll walk. If I feel like being out for 2 hours, it'll be 2 hours, 5 hours, or run all night. It just depends. Other days I run with music. I like listening to music, maybe shorter runs, tempo runs. And, like you, I digest books. I love books, but I'm training a lot, so I've turned to audiobooks. I probably have 500 audiobooks on my playlist. And this book is available on audio as well, if that's something you want to listen to.
Did you do the narration for it?
I didn't. I wish I would have, but with COVID restrictions, I couldn't get into a studio, and I don't have the setup at my house to do it. Like the guy who did it has a sound studio in his basement.
Dean, do you log your mileage still, weekly mileage, and do you have like weekly goals, or is it really truly just like however I feel today, I'm going to do it?
It's freeform. I might have a daily goal for a run, but as far as weekly, no, it's freeform.
In the book, you had 3 weeks to get it ready for Western States, and it sounds like, again, I don't want to give too much of it away. How did you knowing that you only had 3 weeks to get into the race, did you cram your mileage? Were you excited about it? So the running was like, because you had a big thing on the calendar. It's a lot easier to hit a goal when you have something big on your calendar. Did you shift your focus over? I know you don't taper. Did you shift your focus over those 3 weeks to kind of cram it in?
I did. I followed every hack I could to try and get it in shape in 3 weeks to run 100 miles and a tough 100 miler. Yeah, I did it all.
We have a question here from, I think, one of your buddies, Will Romine. And Will wanted to know, as someone who's run it all, is there a race or distance or location that's still on your bucket list?
Yeah, and this will make sense to Will. Fiji. And I'll tell you why. Will is actually in the book. You read the chapter about running across Central Asia with the U.S. Department of State. Will was the guy who brought that all together. So I owe him a lot because that was an amazing experience running across Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. And Will now, he read the book as well, Jesse. I sent him a copy and he read it. He finished this morning and I got an email from him at 7 a.m. and he said, I just signed up for a 100 miler. I said, I hope you still like me when it's over, Will, but great guy. And he's going to be working with the U.S. Department of State at the American Embassy in Fiji. So we're hoping to do some big run in Fiji.
What I got out of the book was I got your voice in my head. And there's a lot of takeaways, and I highlighted the book. So I actually went through it and, made notes within the book so I could go back. I don't know if you guys can see this, but, underlining some things and on the pages that were relevant. And then I took a bunch of notes in the back of the book. And that's what I do, right? I do like my own little, what are my main takeaways? But what I got out of it more than anything was the spirit. It was like the conviction of, you're going to get through this. This is not a big deal. It's hard and challenging, but you've never been through hard and challenging before. You think you're going to go through life without hard and challenging. It's time to get, like I said earlier, Mark, what did you expect? You signed up for 100 miler. You think it's going to be easy? And so it was having this fear that was a big takeaway for me of just don't be wimpy. What would Dean do in this situation? He'd just blow through it and look for the high to come back. Know that another low, and just know if you keep going forward motion, you're going to get out of this place that you're in. Dean, someone said that Rate Ultras teach us a lot about ourselves, and they would love to know what your most valued lessons are. But what challenge do you see the most often in ultra races?
I think the biggest challenge is overcoming yourself, right? We have self-contrived restrictions on what we do. I mean, we don't believe we can do certain things because it seems impossible. But when you run 100 miles, you learn that nothing is impossible. Damn it, nothing. This carries over in the business to whatever. So your horizons are just vastly expanded because you can do something you never thought was possible. You've achieved the impossible. And that carries over, as you've seen, Jesse, with everything you do.
Someone asked a question that you'll have to interpret it how you see fit, but they're curious if the animal kingdom inspires your approach to running. And at first I read that, that actually resonates with me. Does the cheetah or one of the fastest birds or the grace of the animals in any way, do you visualize other species or great form when you're running, or have you studied form?
I've got to be honest, that's an interesting question. And, as far as animals go, I've just always looked at the human form and the human animal. I always view us as animals, which we are. I know that I've outrun a horse over 100 miles at the Vermont Trail 100. It's a concurrent horse race, and I know a human can outrun a horse. But other than that, I really haven't studied much on animals. I think, birds are fascinating with their speed and grace. I think birds are something that I've always, pondered how they're able to achieve such intricate maneuvering, especially hawks, in such tight quarters when their brains are not all that big.
Yeah, Dean, you mentioned that, all these books and your 500 books on your playlist. Are there one or two books that have really inspired you or changed you? Is there a nutrition book or a mindset book, or even just a book that, like, when you go through this list of audiobooks, are there one or two that stand out for any specific reason?
Well, here's one I would highly recommend. This is Jesse's book, and I'm telling you, get this book. You'll laugh your ass off. This is the funniest book. I passed this along to so many people, including my dad. My dad knows David Goggins, as well. So it's a great book. Really, Jesse. Talk about humor. You're the master.
Well, I appreciate that. So is there anything that you want to say, Dean? Is there anything that about the book that you wish you would have included? Or, let's talk about the process just for a second. What's your process for writing the book? Is it note-taking? Is it like, I want to tell the story of Western states? Is it like, this is kind of part memoir too, because it talks a little bit about your family. Your parents are really introduced to this in a bigger way here. Obviously, your relationship with your son is introduced in a bigger way here, which I thought was a really good element as a parent. I love that you said that you do more satellite than helicopter parenting. What's the process for going about a book like this?
This one I wrote it as it went along. Usually I have a book pretty much outlined and scripted. I know what I want to write about. This one I had no idea. I knew I wanted to tell a story about staying the course, staying true to who you are and showing up every day. How I was going to convey that, I wasn't quite sure. And it just kind of came to me on a run. As, in a lot of the chapters I wrote while I was running. Literally, we have some of our clearest thoughts when we're running. So I'd go out and run. I'd dictate into my phone sometimes and just put in earbuds and type up my notes. But to be a good writer, I think you need clear alone time. And there's not much of that these days. And I'm not a guy who can shut himself in a room and just sit there and write. To me, that's too static. I think you'd agree that, motion elicits emotion. And I do my best writing when I'm running.
Right. Well, what was it like meeting the president or the first?
It was surreal. So, I'll give away some of the book. There's a chapter in there where I actually got invited to visit the White House when I was running across America. So I ran from LA to New York City. And when I was running into DC, I got a call from Michelle Obama's press secretary saying she really wants to meet you. And I thought it was a prank call, Jesse. I'm like, oh, come on. Well, I'm running down Pennsylvania Avenue and the gates of the White House open. And the guy's like, hey, Karno, come on in. She's waiting for you. And I thought it was so surreal. So he tells me to run through the gate, and there's someone standing at the entrance to the White House. She's like, hey, over here. You run right down there. And I ran into the White House and right down the hallway of the White House. And someone said, yeah, Michelle's out on the South Lawn. She's waiting for you. And so I ran out to the South Lawn, and there I am face to face with Michelle Obama. And she looks at me and she says, it's such an honor to meet you, Dean. And I literally, my jaw just went, how do you know who I am? It's like, oh, the girls and I have been watching your journey across America, and it's been so inspirational. You can't make this stuff up, right?
No, who would have thought, running one night, and then all of a sudden you have sponsors, you have a book, you're in races, you're at the White House, you're on Time Magazine, you're international, and you're inspiring everybody. So it's unbelievable. So again, if you're just joining, the book is called The Runner's High. Dean Karnazes' most recent book just launched today. You can order it here by hitting purchase a Runner's High. The link is on the bottom. And this is an amazing conversation, Dean. I loved it. Anything you want to add in conclusion?
No, just I want to express my gratitude to you for your energy and for signing up to do this. I know you're a busy guy, and you brought so much to this conversation. I know the audience appreciates it. So thank you, Jesse.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the both of you. Definitely, I got myself a new perspective on running. To the audience, once again, if you would like to purchase a copy of Dean Karnazes' new books, A Runner's High, just click on the link below. And thank you again, once again, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
All right.
Enjoy your evening, Jess. Okay. Bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Good night.
Have a good run.
All right.